Our Around the World segment tonight, just hours after the assassination of Russian ambassador to Turkey Andrei Karlov, another Russian diplomat was found dead in Moscow, shot in the head apparently in his own apartment. Nobody's claimed responsibility for the second attack, but with me now, retired Navy commander and former Pentagon spokesman J.D. Gordon. J.D., thanks for being here.
Hey Liz, great to see you. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you too. J.D., these two attacks, do you expect them to be correlated in any way?
Who knows? The investigators will look into it and we'll see. What I think is really interesting, though, is that we're seeing a lot of destabilization right now throughout Europe. We're seeing these attacks on ambassadors. We see this truck that drove into a Christmas market in Berlin. And I think it's really concerning because I think things are just going to get worse, Liz, before they get better.
Right. ISIS right now has been calling for these lone wolf attacks. I hate to use that term because they're all tied or inspired by ISIS. This is their new strategy. But ISIS has been calling for these lone wolf attacks throughout Europe over the Christian holiday season, and that's what we're seeing. I mean, we saw 4 or 5 just yesterday and the day before. But about this Russian attack, like I said, no one's claimed responsibility for this yet, unlike in Germany where ISIS claimed responsibility for the Christmas market attack. But a Russian leader, he's an ultra-nationalist, he said, this is his quote, "The West is trying to embroil us. All conflicts were inspired by Britain." JD, that seems pretty insane to me.
It is pretty insane. You know, there are a lot of insane people in Russia, too. So it doesn't surprise me. The ultra-nationalists in Russia think everybody's the enemy except for the Russians. So we've got to worry about them, too.
Right, and this attacker that assassinated the Russian ambassador in Turkey, he did cry Allahu Akbar. As he mentioned Aleppo, of course, but he also cried Allahu Akbar, which is a radical Islamic thing to cry. He was a Turkish police officer, but he wasn't part of the security detail. He just used his credentials to enter. This was premeditated.
Premeditated, and you know what, Liz, just a colossal failure of security there on the scene from both the Russians and the Turks. You know, why didn't the Russian ambassador have bodyguards on both sides of him? You know, Ankara is a place that's been overrun by terrorists, both from Kurdish elements and also from Islamic State elements. There's no shortage of terrorists right now in Turkey. So the Russians failed there, and also the Turks. Why did they let the guy into the building? He just flashed his police badge, didn't even go through the metal detectors. I mean, that's insane. So the Turks and the Russians really failed on the scene.
Right, and it's such a tragic situation, too. Now, 6 other people besides, of course, the shooter was shot. He was killed, but 6 other people were detained after the attack. It's his family and his roommate. But what is your sense here, JD? Do you think that this is a so-called soldier of Allah, meaning a Westerner who's sympathetic to ISIS? Or was this person self-radicalized on the internet? Or does this have any elements, in your opinion, of a terror cell?
It could be a terror cell. I was just watching reports today that there could be directions along that way. But when the investigation's done, we'll learn more about this guy. But I'm concerned about him. But I'm concerned about a lot of people throughout Turkey and throughout Europe. This guy that killed all the folks at the Christmas market, 12 people, wounded about 50. He was from Tunisia, 24-year-old guy, radicalized guy. He was on a lot of different wanted lists. He used a lot of aliases. So this is what you can expect, Liz, when Germany has 5 million Muslims, France has 5 million Muslims. They didn't do really much to integrate them, and a lot of them who came didn't want to be integrated in the first place. So this truck attack in Berlin, I think, is very much like what we saw in Nice, and unfortunately, we're going to keep seeing them. So if the Europeans were smart, and they're getting smarter, they need to do a lot more for physical security at these festivals, you know, with concrete roadblocks, metal posts, things like that. You just can't have people out in the open where they're sitting ducks for jihadists.
Right, and JD, not to pivot too far away from the Turkish incident, but when we're talking about Berlin, the suspect that is still on the loose, he's armed and dangerous. The German authorities say he's been arrested before. Not only is he an asylum seeker from Tunisia, he served 4 years in an Italian prison for trying to commit an arson attack on a school there. This is not someone who should have been let in the country in the first place.
Yeah, not at all. I mean, and he should have been deported back to Tunisia. I was just in Europe for a few weeks, Liz, as we've been talking about before in different programs in Hungary, Slovakia, and Finland. I met with a couple different foreign ministers. I met with the deputy prime minister. And there's a sense there that it's really gotten out of control in Europe as far as the security situation. What really needs to happen is NATO needs to start bringing refugees and migrants back to where they came from. So basically today, if you're a smuggler, all you need to do is get refugees and migrants 12 miles off the coast of Libya and basically say, hey, you were in distress. You'll get picked up by the Italian Coast Guard and get a free ticket to Sicily, then get into Italy. Same thing over in Turkey and Greece. there are a lot of refugees and migrants going right into Greece, and then they get a ticket to Athens on a boat, and then they go throughout Europe. That's insanity. They've got to be returned to the point of origin, whether that's in Africa or in Turkey. NATO has to get smart on it, and the policies for the European Union have to adjust.
Right. In my opinion, Angela Merkel needs to step up here, too, because this suspect, and of course, I'm going to mention again, they haven't caught him yet, but this suspect had fake passports. He had half a dozen fake passports, I think, yet even when he was arrested because of this forged document, he was then let go again. I mean, these people, it's not only easy to come to the nation, like you just detailed the train. Once they're there, they have no deterrence. They don't even need to be worried that they're going to be deported if they're caught being fake, because they're not.
Yeah, what's happened is there's an alliance between the political left and the big EU countries, Germany and France, and they have all the power in the EU. They basically bully the rest of the 28 countries. So in France and Germany, there's been an alliance between the political left and big business, because big business wants cheap labor. And the political left basically says, hey, you're intolerant if you question it all. So what happens is there's not really any center-right conservative think tanks or media in Germany and France. So if you question the migrants like I'm doing right now, they'll say, oh, you're just Islamophobic, nativist, xenophobic, horrible names that shuts down debate. And you know what, Liz? It's killing Europe right now.
Right. It literally is killing Europe. It's literally costing people's lives, yet they're not doing anything about it. JD, thank you so much for your analysis. It was great to talk to you, and Merry Christmas.